Us right now is former German defense minister and economics minister KT zu Guttenberg. Good to see you, KT. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I want to ask you about Europe and definitely Deutsche Bank, but first let's take on the debate. Any thoughts, your reaction to last night?
I came back from a day trip to London last night and saw a replay, and without a lot of expectations, but my mood deteriorated rapidly.
Why?
First of all, the moderator. I think it was such a disaster. Secondly, but the good news was it was finally somehow mild-mannered at the beginning, but then interrupting each other and turning it into a culture of conversation. And then not too many enlightening moments. But in a nutshell, I think Pence won it. He seemed to be, even from a European perspective, somehow presidential. And so that was the last thing I gathered before I went to sleep.
In the middle of the debate or afterwards?
Already once in the middle of the debate, I have to admit. It was late. It was actually early in the morning.
So, I mean, with regard to the international discussion, foreign policy, did you get anything from either of them? Or was it just too much interruption and too annoying in terms of really getting substance?
Well, they tried at least. And we must not forget the vice president is a core element as an interlocutor to Europe, to other places, on the international stage. So the expectations from a European perspective were actually quite high to see what do these guys have to say. Honestly, none of them has ever appeared on a stage to be recognized internationally. Senator Kaine may sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee, but he's not a figure so far. So I think they did, they at least tried to address Russia, to address Syria, to address a couple of other things. What they missed to do is to talk about the intertwining lines. What they missed to do is actually to send a signal also abroad and say this might be the new administration, this might be our approach, just apart from ad hoc decisions if something happens in a case of a crisis.
I'm glad you brought it. It's hard to make those connections when you have people interrupting one another.
Oh, right.
As I interrupted Kevin. But it's hard to tell that narrative.
Exactly.
When you have a moderator who isn't in control and two candidates, particularly one in particular, who is interrupting.
We're having slow global growth, and that's one of the biggest concerns, especially internationally, so I'm glad you brought that up. And it seems like all the central banks across the world are looking for guidance from the Federal Reserve and getting some clarity. Is there a big focus on our central bank, and if there's going to be a Fed rate hike in December, especially because it's knock-on effects to the currencies, and we're seeing that a lot of the governments abroad want to see a lower currency there and a stronger currency here?
Oh, there definitely is, and there has been for years, of course. It's one of the most significant signals a central bank can send comes from over here. And the expectations are high, yes. On the other hand, we are dealing with a very awkward situation, specifically in Europe, where you have the less than zero interest rate policy of the ECB, where you have the Bank of England now somehow trying to juggle with the Brexit decision, and we might talk about that a little later on.
Yeah, let's do that.
So these are the things that need to be put into place as well. But there is a lot of expectation that we finally see a step that deserves the term step, and which is not just a delay. We
were just going through the purchasing managers indexes in Europe, and they are all below what they were in August. The IMF yesterday cut their global growth forecast. What's your take on the economy today? And I want to get your take on the Deutsche Bank element here, because a lot of people, I mean, who said it recently that Deutsche Bank is the biggest risk to the global economy?
Yeah, the biggest systemic risk, right? Not only the biggest
risk.
The
IMF said that. Christine Lagarde.
The term systemic, or the ghost of the term systemic, is back in town and back around the globe. So people in Berlin are nervous, people in Frankfurt are nervous, people in London are nervous. They look at a bank that is interrelated to so many other business aspects globally that the impact of going down the drain would be enormous, definitely enormous. Having said that, there have been a lot of misperceptions. So a couple of people are still talking about a liquidity problem. Deutsche Bank doesn't have a liquidity problem. It does have an equity problem. It has a problem dealing with a failed path to restructure its business, to become a global player in the investment banking circus, which didn't work out properly. So the problem right now is what to do and what kind of signal to set. And what actually could we expect also towards Deutsche Bank? We don't have a settlement yet regarding the fines from the U.S. It's, of course, there were some rumors. It might be less. It might be
talking about $5.4 billion.
But even if it's
for weeks.
Sorry for interrupting. I don't want to act like yesterday's candidates, but it's
I'm tallying this, by the way.
No, I was just wanted to point out that that's been a point of discussion about the U.S. government sticking it to Deutsche Bank.
But if you talk about $5.4 billion, it's still a lot in respect of the little reserves the Deutsche Bank has for litigation causes and purposes and other things. So then there are a couple of unresolved issues. Russia fine that might loom on the horizon, on some money laundering issues that haven't been settled yet, other things. So there's a lot of uncertainty. So what has a chancellor to do then? Actually, she should stay silent. She didn't last week when she said, well, there is no bailout. There is a clear dementi for that at the right beginning.
She caused a big sell-off.
Exactly.
But if there were to be a bailout, let's just say it would happen, and she did bring it up, would it be the Bundesbank or would it be the ECB? So the Bundesbank is the German central bank, right, which has ceded control to the ECB on a lot of matters, and that's been a point of contention, especially with Greece. But who would bail them out if there were to be one? Not saying that there would be.
Let's first of all hope that there wouldn't be any. And it would be the probably most damaging step for her ahead of a re-election next year. There was just a poll in Germany where they said if there is an indirect tie to taxpayers' money, about 80% were against it. So she has to be extremely careful not to tamper with that topic too intensely. Probably if it comes to such a step, which I don't expect yet, probably ECB, the most tempting option.
Katie, great to see you.
Great
Thank you so much. Katie Guttenberg there. Don't forget